Good evening, everyone. My name is Stephanie Niles. I'm the Vice President for Enrollment and Communications at Ohio Wesleyan University, and I'm thrilled to have the chance to welcome you this evening to our Bishop Plus session, Staying on the Ball, featuring a number of members of our athletic department. I'm going to turn the platform over to them in just a minute and ask each of them to introduce themselves, to say a word about their time at Ohio Wesleyan, the sport they coach. But they're here tonight really not so much to speak about their particular sport, though I'm sure all of them would be happy to answer some brief basic questions, but really to address the student athlete experience. What's it like to be a student athlete at Ohio Wesleyan? How does one balance academics? What's it like to be involved in other ways on campus? Can I study abroad? Many of you participants have already submitted some great questions to us, and you've given us a place to start, and we will hopefully get to all your questions and more. If you have questions as we continue through the session, don't hesitate to use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen and submit your question. We will again try and get to as many as we can. We'll spend up to an hour together, but you also see here on the screen that our participants' email addresses are listed. I know that whether you have a question about their sport specifically or the general athlete experience, any of them would be happy to address your questions further. So please don't hesitate to reach out to them, make a note of what you see here before we conclude the session. Let me go ahead and get started. I am going to start with who I see on my screen first. So Paige, do you want to start and introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm Paige Messersmith, the head women's lacrosse coach. I am about 9 months into the job here, and it has absolutely not been what I expected my first season to be like. But I have quickly learned how, special Ohio Wesleyan is, and look forward to sharing more about that.
Thanks, Paige. Kris. Oh, Kris, you're still on mute.
Hi. I'm Kris Boey. I'm our head track and field coach and associate director of athletics, and I'm concluding my 18th year at Ohio Wesleyan and looking forward to many more.
Very good. And Mike.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mike DeWitt. I'm the head men's basketball coach. I'm actually an Ohio Wesleyan graduate from the year 1987. And I've been coaching here now, just completed my 21st year.
Thanks, Mike. Kirsta has just joined us from a team meeting. Kirsta, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Kirsta Cobb. I'm the head volleyball coach. And I have been at Ohio Wesleyan for 6 years, 6 seasons, and love being a part of this community.
Great. Thanks, Kirsta. And let me turn it over to Doug Zipp, our Director of Athletics, to introduce himself and to say a few words about our program.
Thanks, Stephanie. Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you for spending a better part of your evening with us tonight to learn more about Ohio Wesleyan athletics and the great things that we do. Let me preface our comments by saying these are absolutely unprecedented times. And as Paige mentioned, it certainly was not the spring we expected. And for a first-year head coach, her life was kind of turned upside down. And, we constantly asked, you sure you want to be a ball coach of some type? And, these are the types of things that Ohio Wesleyan is all about, and what the liberal arts education and how we adjust and adapt and be nimble really involve. And it was certainly put to the test these past 8 weeks. But our hearts do go out to our spring student athletes, and especially our seniors who will graduate in just 3 short days with their seasons coming to an abrupt halt. But they've done wonderful things here, and I'll share a few of those pieces with you here in just a moment. But it's been a wonderful 4 years for them, and unfortunately the seasons ended the way they did, but their experiences have been absolutely incredible during their college career, not only playing their athletic sport, but also getting a top quality education. On that note, we have 4 things that we really go after in our Department of Athletics. And the first thing is academics. That is our #1 priority and what we really push. And that's evidenced by our success in the classroom. We have about 513 student athletes, and we have a 3.16 cumulative GPA. That's pretty impressive. 39 of those students had a perfect 4.0, and we had over 178 students on the dean's list, which is 3.5 or better. So it's really important to us that we do address the academic mission. Our GPA for the 513 is just a few ticks above the general student population, So it shows you where our priorities are. The next piece that we really like to stress is service, giving back to the community in which you live. That's really important to us as a department. And it's not really a requirement. It's more of an expectation that this is what our students will do, and they will get involved giving back to the community in which they live. And that's really, really important. All of our programs participate in some way, shape, or form, whether it's Big Brother, Big Sister, they're going to hospice, they're working with elementary school children, the disabled, you name it, they're doing all kinds of different things. Team Impact is another one, which is a program across the country where they adopt an athlete who's a youngster. I know volleyball has done that, our men's lacrosse team has done that, and several of our other teams have engaged in that as well. So they're really making an impact in the community and on our youngsters. The next one is the student athlete experience. That is really, really important to us. And when we talk to our student athletes, we always try to stress, get involved in something other than your sport and going to class. Although those are really, really important, and that's probably 1A and 1B of why you are attending Ohio Wesleyan. But the other piece is, when we talk to alumni, those are the things they talk about. The experiences they had as a student on campus, whether it's a club, an organization, they went Greek, they got a job, they had an internship, an externship, they lived on a certain hall and stayed connected with their hallmates in a residence hall, whatever that may be, that's part of the true Ohio Wesleyan experience. And if they're not doing that, we've probably failed them in some way. But when I ask our student athletes to raise their hands in team meetings, just across the board, you see most of the hands going up. So they're really, really involved. And then the fourth one is our competitiveness is winning. Everybody thinks the AD is crazy by having winning be his fourth priority, but we need to get those other pieces done first. And then we worry about the competitiveness, because after all, most likely that's the driving force. They want to play the sport in which they love for 4 more years and be very, very competitive. And you'll hear from some of our coaches tonight on how competitive and the involvement and the dedication and passion that goes into playing that sport. The last piece I want to address before we start answering some questions here, and that is kind of what's the fall going to bring? What's the great unknown as we move through the next couple of months? I can share this with you. We are doing a lot of serious planning on our campus, and obviously our number one piece is we're going to try to do everything we possibly can to get our students here in the fall. However, life is always changing. Things change daily, weekly. But we are trying to look at all kinds of different scenarios of what that will all look like if they were to come back, in August. How does that all work? What are social distancing factors? What are all the health and safety concerns that we need to be aware of, involved in, to be able to protect our students coming, our faculty, our staff, and everybody in our university community? So those things are really important. The next step on that is we're also planning as a conference, the North Coast Athletic Conference, of what these scenarios will look like when we do come back in the fall. Whether it's in August, September, whatever those dates may be, but how are we going to handle that as a conference with our schedules, with our social distancing, and all the health and safety concerns that go along with participating in athletics? Again, the number one piece here is health and safety. We want to make sure that we're able to provide the quality student athlete experience that our athletes demand, deserve, and the reason they're coming here. But at the same time, we want to keep everybody safe. And those things are very, very important. But just so you know, we're meeting several times a week, both as a university and as a conference, to talk about what do all those different scenarios look like and how are we going to best be able to provide that experience when our students do get back in the fall. But without further ado, I will turn it back over to Stephanie to kind of lead our conversation and share a lot more information with you about Ohio Wesleyan athletics. Stephanie?
Terrific, Doug. That was a great introduction, and you're right with the questions that our participants have posed to us already, and those I know we'll receive here over the next 45 minutes or so. We'll be able to dig much deeper into some of the things that you've just started to touch on. So thank you for that. As you might imagine, lots of questions came in about athletics and academics. How do I balance the two? So let me start with this question for whomever would like to answer it. What's the ratio of time spent studying and in class to time spent in athletics? Anyone want to jump in?
I'll jump in. This is Kirsta Cobb. So I would say our athletes are spending, during the actual season, we have about a 2-hour time block typically for our practices. And then you may be doing some kind of a lifting or a film session. So, you know, anywhere from like 2 to 3 hours a day, you're going to be on your sport. And then you're going to spend a good amount of time studying and in class, obviously. So that's going to be a majority of your time throughout the entire year. You have a lot more time during your off season, you know, where we just can't work with you per NCAA rules. So that gives you a lot more time as a regular student and to get more involved in lots of other things. But you can plan for during your season or in your not traditional season to be, you know, pretty much daily about 2 to 3 hours. I know a lot of our programs will have study table hours as well. And so that's kind of built into your schedule, that you're going to be spending time studying as a team, kind of in some designated hours, usually in the library. A lot of teams are going to be over there. There's a lot of options available in the library for walk-in tutoring during those times as well. So that can be a nice convenience for when you're over there. And I think it's kind of a camaraderie thing as well, that a lot of our teams are doing study tables generally around the same time in the library. So, you know, a lot of student athletes are in there kind of doing work and being the student part of the athlete after they've spent part of their day practicing. So it's going to probably be you know, generally what you're used to from a high school perspective, you know, spending a couple hours a day on your sport, maybe a little bit more intense. You know, if you didn't do any lifting or film sessions in high school, that might be an added thing in that you aren't used to, but it's definitely manageable. And like Doug said, our student athletes do really well in the classroom. We tend to find that they do better in their season, because they are, you know, having to time manage and structure their time a little bit more. And because of that, they actually are way more responsible with their time than maybe the typical student, because they just have to. So you're going to be pretty structured and find the time to figure it out. And then you're going to have a lot of resources. Your coaches, your teammates are going to be all, you know, looking out for you and making sure you're kind of staying the path.
Terrific, Kirsta. That was a great comprehensive answer. Anyone want to add anything to that specifically? Mike?
Yeah, Stephanie, I'll add something. I noticed one of the questions being asked was, are there conflicts with class and the athletics? Mm-hmm. And inevitably, yes, there are. There aren't many. And when those do occur, we have a great working relationship with our faculty. And the communication between the athletic coaches and the faculty is tremendous here. So if there are situations where a team is traveling overnight and going to miss a day of class, or leaving in the afternoon to get to a game in the evening, there's great communication between the coaches and the faculty members are aware that the student athletes will be missing class, and the student athletes are responsible for what they miss in the class, no question, but our faculty is very understanding that there's going to be conflicts, and tends to go above and beyond to help the students get accomplished athletically what they need to get accomplished. You know, I can speak, you know, from experience that when we have to miss class for basketball game travel, again, which isn't a lot, but when it is, like, our guys have no extra concerns, no extra stress about it, because they're able to work with the faculty members so well, because that's what we do here.
That's great, Mike. Thank you for that. Let me follow it up with another academic question. What academic support is available specifically for athletes? Kirsta, you mentioned study tables. Another part of that question was, are there study table requirements? Kris, do you maybe want to, Kirsta, do you want to jump in?
Kris, you can go ahead if you want.
Sure. First and foremost, all of our student athletes are able to take full advantage of all the resources, the robust resources that the university provides through our Academic Resource Center. Each coach and each program may have their own way about establishing study tables based on their, you know, their what they've traditionally done with their team and those expectations. So those might vary from coach to coach, program to program. I would say across the board, every program has academic accountability that takes place within their team for their student athletes. But I think that the more overarching thing is that, you know, with a 10-to-1 student to faculty ratio, all of our students have personal relationships with their faculty members where they can feel comfortable walking into an office and getting help and having that kind of communication. But the Academic Resource Center is fantastic. And so every resource that would be available to every student on campus is also available to every student athlete.
Very good. Let me follow it up with a question that's just come in. How will, and I think, Mike, you addressed this a little bit, how will away games affect time away from school, and about how often on average are away games?
Yeah, that really depends upon the sport and the time of year. So it's hard to be very specific, I would think. And knowing most programs, there are some weekend travel, more or less, that you know, if they are playing a game on Saturday or Sunday, you know, they'll spend Saturday night, you know, on the road in a hotel or something like that. Generally, our coaches do a great job of not scheduling overnight or away games during the midweek, because we don't want to miss class, because our priorities are, as Doug talked about, the academics do come first here, and they should. So again, it's something that happens, but it's very manageable if you're organized and if you communicate and if you're willing to put in a little bit of effort.
Something I'll add to that is we're really lucky with where our location is within our conference and just within our region as well. So a lot of our competition is not too far away. So even when we are on the road, we typically can leave, you know, again, this is a little bit dependent on the sport. So if you're an outdoor sport and the location you're going to maybe doesn't have lights, you know, you may have to leave a little earlier than normal. But a lot of times the matches and games that you're going to be going to, you can leave, you know, closer to when school is kind of done for the day, so to speak, and then still get back at a pretty decent hour, just by the location of where our conference is and where we are within that. And then same thing within our region. You know, we will go outside of our conference and outside of our region as well, but it will be fewer and farther between. So those longer trips, you know, can mostly be on the weekends, and we don't have to miss a lot of class. And then I will also say we have a committee on campus that's made up of staff, faculty, students, and alumni, and our faculty athletic reps. And that committee will approve all of the schedules as well every year to make sure the student athletes are not missing too much class, or if there's anything on the schedule that looks, you know, maybe like it would be tough for the student athlete, you know, maybe way too many Tuesdays they're missing, and we need to look at that. Would it be really tough to take a class on that Tuesday afternoon, something like that. So that committee is also there to kind of just checks and balance and make sure that student athlete experience is going to be okay in the classroom.
Great, thank you. A follow-up to that, Kris, this question was specifically for you. What's the average travel schedule for cross-country season?
Sure, great question. So in cross-country, at this point, the sport has evolved where we're competing generally about every other week, with the exception of some postseason competition. So we host an invitational on campus in early September. And outside of that, from September 1st through hopefully middle of November to late November, we're competing about every other week.
Great, thank you. Paige, I know you're newer to the campus, but you may have already had these conversations with your athletes. What if I want to travel abroad, have an internship, do research while in season or during off season? How does that work? What's preferable? How do I balance that?
I would say the main reason that a lot of them chose to come to a small liberal arts college, and specifically like a Division III institution, is the ability to be able to do all of those things. I would say it's what, out of all the institutions I've been at, OWU does best, is connect our players with opportunities to travel abroad, whether that's for a full semester or a theory to practice grant over the summer or during fall break or even during spring break, depending on what season you compete in. And our players have held both, even within this year, held internships both during the year, during our competitive season, and during the fall season in the non-traditional. And I think that they, as long as they are really communicative about it, you know, and plan well, it just adds so much value to their experience. And specific to the travel abroad, we encourage them to do that, whether it is in our non-traditional season or over the summer. It is a really like global experience that you can't really get in any other part of your life than if you were to study abroad during college.
Mike, your sport spans 2 semesters specifically. Do you want to speak to this concept in general? There was another question specifically about schoolwork and study abroad. How does one handle that, particularly in a winter season sport?
That's a great question. It's a little more difficult for winter sports student athletes to study abroad, obviously, because winter sports span both semesters. But it's also something that if it's really, really important to the student athlete, I think all of our coaches are more than willing to have a student athlete miss the first part of the season to study abroad and gain an educational opportunity overseas, or all the theory to practice, or participate in all the theory to practice grants that Ohio Wesleyan offers. Having said that, most of the student athletes, the winter student athletes that I've known, do a lot during the summer with their traveling. I know some of our men's basketball players have done immersion programs in Costa Rica, for example. So my answer to that question, it's a little more difficult, but it's certainly doable if it's something that the student athlete has their heart set on.
Great, thank you, Mike. Anyone else want to add perspective to that?
No,
Sure.
I'll just reiterate, what Mike and Paige said. That's the wonderful thing about Ohio Wesleyan. There are so many different opportunities that even though it might not seem like, oh, I'm in my regular season, I really can't go abroad. There's so many other opportunities in the opposite semester, over the summer, whatever it might be. If you really want to travel, we'll help you find a way to do that.
Right.
Kris, did you want to add to that?
Sure, I would echo that as well. Oftentimes with our distance runners in particular who are in cross country, indoor track, outdoor track, and they don't want to miss a season, they can find excellent opportunities to do travel learning, whether it's over break periods or over the summer. And as others have stated, we absolutely support them if they do want to take a semester to have that experience. But there's lots of creative ways to have those experiences, and your faculty members and the folks in the OWU Connection office will be happy to help all of our students explore what the various opportunities might look like.
Kris, you referred to travel learning. Could you just say a little bit for the student who may not have been familiar with that term about how that's different than traditional study abroad?
Sure. So most people think of traditional study abroad as a full semester opportunity to perhaps travel to Europe or somewhere else around the world. And certainly we have amazing opportunities for our students to do that are taken advantage of every year by many, many students. But one of the things that makes Ohio Wesleyan unique, and as part of our OWU Connection program, is students can choose to take classes that have a travel learning component associated with it. So it might be a geology class that over fall break travels to the Appalachian Mountains or travels to Utah, or it might be a finance or economics class that travels to Ireland over spring break, or it could be a Chinese class that travels abroad, in May following the semester ending. We've had members of our team take part in those and many others, many other similar type experiences every year, and have tremendous experiences. And the thing they love about it is they're not committing an entire semester to it, but they can get an amazing experience, and it fits into a much smaller period of time that allows them to perhaps have an uninterrupted academic period with 8 full semesters on campus and a full athletic experience.
Great, thanks, Kris. Similar to the question I asked Kris about his travel schedule, Paige, here's one for you. How often are Ohio Wesleyan's lacrosse players traveling for away games?
Kind of like Kirsta mentioned, we're really lucky to be centrally located in the state, and we have a lot of really great competition around us. So I would say our average away game time is under 2 hours. which in the grand scheme of things is a very small duration compared to what other programs may be traveling in different conferences or different areas. And then the longest trips we will do is over the spring break period, and that's normally to play out of region opponents.
And Paige, would you say you're traveling within season, weekly, bi-weekly? How often are you traveling typically?
I would say probably normally half of our games, a little less or a little more our way. So maybe that is 7 to 8 times throughout the season.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Doug, this one might be for you. What is the alumni support like, such as networking and fundraising? Maybe you can start and others might want to jump in related to their sport specifically.
Sure. We have a very active alumni base at Ohio Wesleyan. It's the tradition at this place is unbelievable, unlike a lot of other places I've ever been. And we have a very strong and robust and aggressive fundraising program called Team OWU. We are fortunate enough to have a full-time fundraiser in athletics that helps us, achieve our goals for that. So we're able to provide that first-class, student athlete experience. Each one of our teams has a goal to outreach to their alumni base, their family and their friends, to help support, everything that we're trying to do. But as I mentioned with the alumni support, each one of our teams, that coaches are getting letters, they're in communication with them. We're in communication with them as a university, as an athletic department. Just today I received, 3 nice emails, unsolicited, just thanking us for everything that we're doing for their student athlete. The work that we're doing on our Branch Rickey project, which is the renovation of our gymnasium, our arena for volleyball, men's, women's basketball, and wrestling, which is, an iconic project for us. Just little notes like that, and, just how you doing? What can we do to help support you? Constantly outreaching to us. So it's pretty robust. Just an example for homecoming, we typically get anywhere between 700 and 1,000 people back just for homecoming. And yes, the athletic part is a big piece of it, but just the spirit that our alumni have for this place is what I would consider second to none.
Great, thank you. Kris, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I was going to add, really when it comes down to it, everything we do is about relationships. And one of the real joys of having coached in a place for a significant period of time is developing those relationships with, lasting, lifelong relationships with our alums and student athletes that we coached, and even those that, came before our time here, and seeing those relationships persist among teammates, years and decades after they graduate. So on the alumni side of things, I think that's one of the most special things that we have within our athletic department.
That's great. Here's a related question, not so much about fundraising, but about ongoing support for athletes for career development. What's the role of former student athletes in helping current students with career development activities? Anyone want to start? Doug, do you want to start?
I'll start on that one. It's the same, with the alumni involvement and engagement, and a lot of times it goes by sport, of, connecting, our former alumni for specific sports, and running with it a little bit. Soccer is very, very good at that. Football does a bunch of things, and all of our individual coaches, they know who their alumni are and the types of things, and our alumni are reaching out saying, do you have anybody, who's in the program, what majors are they, they're just as involved as our regular students are who are non-athletes, but I think, it's a lot of folks would think that, we kind of have the hand up just because our alumni are so actively involved and so interested in giving back. And that's really, really important to us.
Great, thank you. Anyone want to add anything to that? Okay, we will move on to the next question. Any of you can answer this from your experience with students. How do many athletes double major?
I think it's pretty common to double major or, major with double minor and some things like that. Not necessarily because they're all trying to do all kinds of things, but it can be because of the liberal arts track. you can sometimes do a double major more easily or add the minor on just by like, oh, if I take one more class in this area, I can get the minor. So a lot of times it's like, oh, well, why not do that? But I also think we really attract students that are really interested in lots of stuff. And they like to get involved in lots of things. They're really interested in lots of pathways and different stuff. And you know, a lot of people don't make up their mind on what their major actually is going to be until they get further into their collegiate career, even if they did come in with what they thought they wanted to do. And that's the beauty of liberal arts, is you get to have your mind open to lots of things, and you can change your mind along the way. And so you may have come in and thought you wanted business, and then as you went through, you decided you wanted politics and government, and then all of a sudden you're now a double major and you're interested in both, and you're creating your own pathway in that way. And I think our faculty are really great at, you know, inspiring them to do things and also helping them develop their own pathway in a lot of ways. So I think that's how it happens. So I think it is really, really common for students in general, not just the student athletes, but students in general at OWU to double major and double minor and do some of those things. But it's definitely kind of happening organically, I think, like that.
Great. Thanks, Kirsta. On the athletic side, how many athletes compete in multiple sports, and is that feasible? Paige, do you want to start?
Yeah, I can speak to that. Currently on our roster, we have 5 dual sport athletes. So an incoming player who's going to play field hockey and lacrosse, and then 2 that each play field hockey and soccer. We've had basketball, lacrosse in the past. So I think that it is definitely something that is supported by all the coaches here. Being the spring sport coach, I normally get lucky because I get first-year players who have had a full competitive playing season by the time they get to me, so I can pretend that they're sophomores for the most part. So it is definitely feasible and something that is encouraged, and I think can really enhance someone's experience if that is what they choose to do.
Very good. Mike, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I would. I think Paige covered it really, really well. I think over my time here, one of the great things about Ohio Wesleyan is the cooperation between the coaches. And as sports have become more and more specialized and practices happen in the non-traditional season and in the off season, Ohio Wesleyan has maintained a commitment to the dual sport athlete. And I think all the coaches on this panel have had student athletes who have played more than one sport and done so very, very successfully. And I'm kind of proud to be a part of that. That you know, we're not making student athletes choose one or the other. If their heart is set on doing both, we'll figure it out.
Great, thank you. Doug, maybe we'll start with you on this question. Question has come in both before and during the session. Do athletes have opportunities to earn scholarship money from Ohio Wesleyan?
Yeah, first let me apologize. I'm battling the sun in my kitchen, so I've had to move around a little bit. But the direct answer to that is no. There are no athletic scholarships at the Division III level. However, you know, our student athletes are some of the best and brightest on campus, and there's all the academic awards. The number one being the Branch Rickey Scholarship, and a good deal of our student athletes have earned that based on all of their academics. But you know, you come to a Division III institution for the love of the game and to continue playing the sport in which you love for the next 4 years. If you are hearing from some of your neighbors, your friends, you know, others from your son or daughter's high school that, oh, I'm getting an athletic scholarship, and you know it's a Division III institution, well, they're not. Mom and dad might, or others might want to call it that, but it's all based on merit and family financial need.
Great. Thanks, Doug. Let me stick with you for just a moment, though others can certainly join in. Can you talk about the additional cost of participating in athletics? It's a question that's just come in on the Q&A.
You know, that's going to vary a little bit by sport. Typically, you know, students don't have to pay to play like you might have to do in high school. However, you know, there are times when, if we're going on a special trip, we will ask, you know, each student to help contribute to the cost of that trip, or to help us fundraise for the cost of that trip. You know, just about every one of our teams has a team store where students would go and buy some of their gear if they want to keep it. There's NCAA rules that you know, even though we might issue a travel suit and, you know, a bunch of other pieces, they all have to come back at the end of the year. We have to inventory and then they get reissued. But if the student purchases them and, you know, through our relationship with our vendor, which happens to be BSN and Nike, you know, there's team stores that go up and they get, you know, gear at a very, very discounted rate. And it's specific to their team. Some of it is personalized, whatever it might be. But on average, you know, it's not a pay for play environment, you know, other than some special activities or special trips that we might be taking.
Great. Here's another question we've received multiple times. Are most athletes recruited or are there walk-on opportunities? And does that vary by sport? Who'd like to start? Mike?
I'll start with that. I think the answer to all three of those questions is yes. We recruit heavily at this level. We do accept walk-on opportunities. And I think, you know, it's a situation where, you know, all of our coaches are not going to turn down someone who's relatively talented and wants an opportunity to compete at the intercollegiate level. There is a commitment that I think student athletes need to be aware of, but you know, for the most part, like I think all of our rosters are full of people that we didn't necessarily recruit, but who just want a chance to play and wear a uniform that says Ohio Wesleyan on it. If someone is interested in walking on, I would encourage that person to contact the coaching staff before they got to school and let them know of their interest and set up a meeting when we start classes in the fall to get that process started.
I'm going to jump in as well, just because as a fall sport, we move in earlier than the rest of the students and start our preseason and practice earlier. So in general, I don't do like a tryout walk-on opportunity. We're doing all of that kind of vetting and figuring out if this person's going to be part of our team beforehand. I know some other sports, especially, you know, winter and spring, have more of an opportunity to do kind of tryout situations or, you know, walk-on situations. But we just don't do that within our sport. But again, that's a little bit more sport by sport. I think a lot of, you know, the teams do some kind of opportunity like that. If we're going to do any kind of an open tryout of any kind, it would happen during our spring semester. But generally, most of the people on our team have been recruited. You know, there are people that will come to us that we didn't seek out, but we'll still go through some kind of a recruiting process. So it's really important to contact the coach, like Mike said.
Thanks, Kirsta. You touched on a couple of things that actually relate to other questions. Maybe you could each comment on this. This particular question was, when does conditioning for the fall season normally start? But perhaps you could address that for each of your sports.
Yeah, I can start with the fall. Sorry, my 2-year-old is coming into the screen. For the fall, okay, maybe somebody else will go first.
Chris, why don't you jump in?
Yeah, happy to jump in. So all fall sports, with the exception of football, who has a bit longer period of time, have 16 practice opportunities before the first day of classes, or before the first competition. So you're looking at a mid-August arrival on campus, and then I'll let other coaches speak to when they begin, because the calendar is a bit different sport by sport. But it sounds like there might be a few cross country and track folks here. So for the distance runners and cross country will arrive generally mid-August. And then in track, we're allowed 24 weeks that we can actively coach. So that also begins in the fall, but a few weeks after classes have begun.
Kirsta, are you ready to jump back in?
Yeah, I think Kris basically answered that. So for fall sports, we'll have you know, a date that the NCAA can specify that when we can move in. So the first opportunity for us to practice, we are going to do that, and it's generally going to be mid-August. About a week before classes would start is when we move in.
Great. Doug, do you want to address any other fall sports in terms of arrival, move-in, what opportunities they have to begin practices prior to the actual start of the semester?
Kris and Kirsta did a nice job explaining that the NCAA dictates when we can come back and when we can actually start practice. There's a formula that we have to use, so we can't bend that very well. And also, you know, the NCAA also has a number of rules. Typical sports seasons, with the exception of track and field and cross country, have about 19 weeks of season that they can actually interact with their players. And that also combines the non-traditional season, which for spring sports, it's a maximum of 5 weeks in the fall. And for fall sports, it's 5 weeks in the spring, but that's all included in their 19. And other than that, you know, our coaches aren't permitted to have athletic related contact with the athletes. So in the off season, when they're not in one of those two seasons, you know, we can't be in the weight room with them, working them out. We can't be, you know, doing film sessions and doing X's and O's and talking about sport. But what we can do is to continue to communicate with them as students, and, you know, wellness checks, making sure they're doing okay. They're still going to class. Everything is focused. You know, they're dealing with life types of issues, and we can help them through some of those things. We just can't talk about athletically related things in the out of season period.
Mike, did you want to add something?
Yeah, as it relates to winter sports, winter sport athletes don't report early, but as Doug kind of referred to, we meet with our student athletes right when they get to campus, and most of the winter sport practice start in October, mid-October. I think swimming might start a little earlier than that, but men's and women's basketball and wrestling and indoor track and field, I think, start a little later than that. But as Doug said, like we're not permitted to do anything formally with our student athletes until the official practice date in mid-October.
Paige, anything you want to add about spring sports?
No, I think just reiterating that we have kind of like a two-part season. We get the 4 to 5 week non-traditional, which is 16 days together, normally some type of day of competition or scrimmage. And then we normally start up at the end of January for our preseason into the regular season.
Great. Paige, in one of your earlier questions, you referenced travel during spring break. Can you talk a little bit more about that and others, if there are travel opportunities that your athletes have been provided with? Maybe you could touch on them as well through your sport specifically.
So for our spring break, we normally try to schedule a really strong out-of-region opponent. So this year we traveled to Florida and played Rhodes College, who was consistently in the top 25. So that's kind of what we use our spring break for, to get some good out-of-region opponents, hopefully get to some warmer weather because it can be a little chilly here in March. And that's kind of the main purpose of the travel. It provides us a great time to bond as a team. It comes at a really critical point in our season where we're kind of headed into conference play. So it's just another opportunity for us to kind of, have time together, grow as a team, and kind of get rejuvenized coming back into the second half of the semester.
Very good. Kris?
Yeah, I would add, our conference competition is our primary focus. But in cross country, we will take a trip that's perhaps out of region in order to see that out of region competition, which is a factor in our NCAA qualifying criteria. And then some years it may be over spring break, other years maybe on a long weekend, we will take a more southern trip to Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina to try to get some competition in warmer weather while it still might be a little more frigid up here in March. Obviously, in doing so, being cognizant and of academic schedules, but most years that will fall over a spring break period. And in our case, we do make it voluntary, given the fact that we have a strong service learning component here at Ohio Wesleyan, and also with some of the travel learning. So in a given year, we might have a portion of our team that are away from the team for one of those southern meets in order to be able to take advantage of some academic opportunities.
Terrific. We've asked some questions about move-in for fall sports, but a couple of questions have come up about student athletes living with their teammates. Do you have thoughts on that? Do you advocate for it? Does it happen sport by sport? What's OWU's general take on teammates living together?
I can come in here. You know, I think it's a positive thing. I would say a majority of our team lives with other teammates, but we definitely let it be up to the student, you know, whatever is going to be the best scenario for them. If they have met somebody that they feel like they're going to live really well with, that's not an athlete, that's not on their team, go for it. You know, we kind of just let them lead the way, but we do, you know, encourage it, especially for incoming freshmen, to try to live with their teammates, because they're kind of going through the same lifestyle, you know, having to get up early or getting home late, being gone all day during their season, and, you know, going to study tables, and just some things that a non-student athlete just may not understand that lifestyle, you know, needing to, you know, get to bed early and getting quiet and, you know, stuff like that. So I think living with a teammate freshman year is really helpful, you know, for staying structured and accountable, and having some kind of buddies to go with that. It really helps, you know, you're going to be walking into a family, and, you know, having the opportunity to live with some of those people really solidifies some of those relationships as well. And then I know a lot of our student athletes that don't maybe live with a teammate do live with another student athlete. So that's a really good way to still have somebody that's understanding your lifestyle, but also gives you a little bit of space from your team, because you do have a lot of time together during your season. And so it can be nice to be with maybe a student athlete, but somebody that's maybe separate from your team as well. So those are probably the most common things that our student athletes do. But again, if we leave it up to the student to figure it out. We will just kind of help them accommodate, you know, and figure out how to become a roommate with their teammate, if that's what they want to do. But again, it's their choice.
Now I'm the one that's muted. Any other perspectives on that? Okay. Let me go on to the next question. Doug, maybe we'll start with you. Can you describe what level of strength and conditioning and athletic medicine support is provided?
Sure. I'll start with the strength and conditioning piece. You know, we don't have a designated strength and conditioning full-time coach, but we have several of our coaches that are certified in athletic in strength and conditioning that assist all of our teams. So it's a program that's really developing. But you know, I'll tell you this, you know, every one of our teams spend a lot of time in the weight room. So that is something that is going to certainly consume their lives, especially in the off season. And then more of a maintenance program as they get in the in season. And some of our coaches may be able to talk about that more directly. And switching gears over to athletic training, in season, every one of our teams are assigned a full-time athletic trainer. We are very fortunate. We have 5 full-time athletic trainers on staff at Ohio Wesleyan, as well as a full complement of team doctors and physical therapists that actually come to our campus, you know, for games. They have office hours at least once a week where athletes can be seen and addressed and taken care of to the best of our ability. And we also, given our location, we have a great referral process and so many resources in the Columbus community that we're able to get the care that is needed. And a lot of that is through our team doc, who is very, very well connected and has a lot of resources at his disposal. So that part is very helpful, but we try to give the best possible care we can on a regular basis. And our trainers are probably some of the most dedicated people on our campus of just caring for our athletes.
Great. Thanks, Doug. Kris, maybe we'll start with you on this question, just simply because of the way it's worded, and others can chime in as it relates to you. How will the shortened spring and fall sports seasons affect the recruitment process? For example, cross country or track times?
Sure. So I would imagine we're like any other sport, you know, where spring sport athletes missed a great opportunity, you know, whether they were seniors or looking ahead to next year's recruiting class, the current juniors. And so obviously that's something that we're aware of and cognizant of. And so that really doesn't affect how we go about recruiting. I mean, we're still looking for the best and the brightest. We're looking for folks that have the intangibles as well as just, having put up, fast times and big marks. So really, as far as, myself and my staff and our programs are concerned, that hasn't changed anything. We're still looking for, the best possible combination of student and athlete, we can find, and knowing that, the seasons have been curtailed and unfortunately, but, we're still recruiting hard and just like we would be in any other year.
Paige or Kirsta, anything you want to add to that as it impacts your seasons? Or your recruitment process, I should say?
I think the only thing is the timeline might look a little different, like it's still up in the air whether or not there are going to be any in-person recruiting opportunities this summer. And, a lot of tournaments have canceled them specific to women's lacrosse. So I think kind of as Kris mentioned, like the process might just look and feel a little different, but the opportunities are still there. And, if you are due diligent about reaching out to coaches, and providing film, if that is an opportunity, an option, the opportunity is still there. And I think everyone's just going to have to be patient and flexible with kind of what the future will look like.
Yeah, I'll echo that. I think as long as you can stay, pretty interactive, and your email, phone call, contact information with the coach, if you have any type of film that can be helpful as well. And then, Ohio Wesleyan's done an excellent job of creating these virtual resources. And so there's a lot of ways to get to know some schools from a distance right now, and maybe start to narrow down that list by talking to coaches and going through virtual resources. And so you can do a lot of that heavy work right now while you even have time in your home and you're wondering what to do. And then when, campuses start to open back up, you won't maybe have as many that you need to go and visit, and you can kind of narrow that process down. So, I know it's maybe not the ideal situation, and we'd all like to be out, and recruiting live and in person and some of that kind of stuff. But I do think there's still a lot to be done and a lot of progress to be made in this situation, and we can get pretty far ahead, in those processes. But a key to that is just staying in communication, answering those emails, sending them out, doing some of that groundwork from a distance as much as you can.
Great, thank you. Paige, there was a question that says, for what does Coach Messersmith look for when recruiting, and what events, tournaments will she be at this year? I was going to invite that person to contact you directly at the email address so that you can talk about that offline, but it presents you already actually answered part of it. It sounds like some of the activities at which you and maybe others might typically recruit are still up in the air. So being in touch with you or other coaches where you have that interest is probably the best bet, given the current situation that we're in. Maybe, Paige, though, you might address it this way. Another student had asked, I'm interested in competing in a sport, but not sure my first steps. Should I reach out to the coach? If so, what's the best way? What information should I share? Do you want to start with that?
Yeah, definitely. I would say email is probably the best form of contact for all of us, or, text message if you have the coach's number. And the biggest thing is just providing us with, what you're interested in studying, what year you're graduating, what position you play, if you play for a club team, any of that type of general information that will provide us, with more context and information to get to know you better as a student and an athlete. If you have any transcripts, that is also really helpful to kind of provide up front, again, for us to just get a better feel for the match academically. But I think the biggest thing is just to never feel like you're bothering us. I think that's something I hear a lot, is I don't want to reach out to the coach that much, but that type of communication just kind of lets us know level of interest, and it helps to really move along the recruiting process.
Great. Anything anyone wants to add to that from your perspective? Okay, let me go on. Can you give some information about official visits? Doug, do you want to start and answer that, and others can chime in?
I'll defer to Kris Boey. He's
Okay.
really good at this one.
All right. Well, thanks, Doug. As far as visits through the athletic department, when you work with a coach to set up a visit, your visit will look very similar to that of any other student who's visiting Ohio Wesleyan. With the addition of the opportunity to meet with members of the coaching staff, to be able to spend time with the team, to be able to take advantage for seniors of an overnight hosting opportunity, if one would wish. Generally speaking, a first visit is typically a day visit, and then a secondary visit, follow-up visit later in the process a student might take advantage of an overnight option. Our admissions staff does a fantastic job of really giving every prospective student a comprehensive look at the campus. And then through our efforts in athletics, we're going to dive deeper into the athletic side of things, the student athlete experience, even right down to the opportunity to visit classes and meet with faculty members. So it's going to be a complete comprehensive visit. And you can certainly schedule through the admissions office. However, I think I can speak for most coaches. It's often best to coordinate with a coach to make sure that your date you want to visit aligns with their schedule so that you can have the best possible experience.
Thank you. I'm going to answer this question quickly. Will the university be permitting in-person visits in June or July? My answer is I certainly hope so. Ohio has moved to a safer at-home policy as opposed to a stay-at-home policy. It is advised to stay at home when one can work from home safely and to keep office environments uncluttered, if you will. And there's really, as many of you may know, there's really stringent requirements on how to keep an office environment safe. So we're not yet at the point where we feel like opening up the campus is the best thing for our community or for visitors. We want to make sure we can do that in a really safe and a way that keeps everyone healthy. And there's no one on campus at the moment. So it's not right now a particularly good time to visit. But I hope that as we move further into the summer, towards June and July, we are certainly talking about the best ways to reopen our community. And we very much look forward to students being back on campus, visitors coming back to campus. I would say just continue to check our website. We are keeping that up to date. And as soon as there are on-campus visit opportunities available, that schedule will repopulate and you'll be able to sign up for availability. Please, though, in the meantime, of course, continue to take advantage of all the virtual ways that we've provided for you to connect with us and learn more about Ohio Wesleyan. Let me turn to this question. How often do coaches recruit or contact a student athlete and then not offer them a spot on the team? In addition, are there cuts? Who'd like to start? Mike, you haven't spoken for a little bit. Do you want to jump in there? Maybe trying to come off mute, I think. Oh, all right. Let me go to actually a different question while he tries to come off mute. Doug, let me hand this one to you. How do you describe and rate your athletic facilities compared to your main competitors in the recruiting process? I know we have some exciting things happening on campus related to at least some of our facilities. Do you want to talk about that?
I think in general, our facilities are excellent for a Division III institution. It's between Selby Stadium, which is one of the oldest stadiums in the country, and one of the largest Division III stadiums in the country, is a quality playing surface, an ideal track, a great setting, just a very historic atmosphere that we have there. Branch Rickey Arena, which we talked about, is currently under renovation, and our goal is by mid-October, it will be open and fresh and up to date and just a delightful space for volleyball, men's, women's basketball, and wrestling to compete, as well as university events. It'll put us right back up towards the top of the conference. And then, all of our outdoor sports, our facilities are top notch. We're very fortunate that we do have facilities for everybody with the exception of Selby, but, such a historic environment where men's and women's lacrosse will share that field in the spring, and football and field hockey in the fall. But baseball, softball have their own places. Tennis has their own place. We have a wonderful soccer facility for our men's and women's soccer teams as well, which is natural grass. But I think our facilities are right up there in the top, towards the top of the conference.
Great. Thanks, Doug. Mike, you're off mute. You want to jump in?
I'm back. Yes. Touching on Doug's facility answer first, I think it says something about university and how forward thinking we are, that we're going ahead with a lot of construction on campus, whether it be athletic facilities or dorms during these times. So we're very optimistic about things going forward with regard to campus and athletics. To answer your question, or the question that was posed about the coaches recruiting student athletes, not offering them spots on the team, and do we have cuts? I would think hopefully there's enough communication between coaches and recruited student athletes that those questions can be answered individually with each coach. I don't think that would happen too often, but if it does, I would hope there would be a valid reason for that. The question with regard to, do we have cuts? It varies by program, but the hard answer is we do. This is a competitive environment that, I think the national statistic is 3% of high school athletes go on to compete in college. So it's an environment where it's very competitive, and you have people from all over the country trying to make our teams and compete intercollegiately. So certain programs do have cuts. There are some of our programs that don't. It's just up to each individual coaching staff and each individual program and where they are with their programs competitively.
Great. Thanks, Mike. So we are at 7:02. We've had lots of questions come in. Thanks to all the participants. Doug, the one question that's outstanding is one you addressed at the beginning, but I know we've probably had some people come in and out. So I'm just going to ask you to say a quick word on this again. With the current situation, is the NCAA doing any changing or adjusting or giving guidance regarding seasons? I think the question is, what will the fall look like? Can you just touch on that again?
Sure. We're planning every day on different scenarios to see what the fall is going to look like. Obviously the first piece is it'll be dictated by all of our campuses, and when we will open, what will classes like, how will class instruction be delivered, and all those details. And, from there, athletics will fall into place. The other piece of that is, yes, the NCAA is giving us guidance every day on what precautions you need to take, what types of best practices you need to be thinking of now as you're starting your planning towards the fall. And at the end of the day, the NCAA will probably dictate how athletics are actually going to look. And, if things are delayed, unfortunately, they will step in and share their thoughts on the direction that we're going to go. Just as they did in the spring, the first shoe to fall was championships were postponed or canceled. And after that happened, most campuses, realized that this is a really serious thing and we need to respond. So we're taking our guidance from the NCAA. We'll be prepared for whatever direction they push us in. And just because championships may be canceled, it doesn't mean our seasons will be postponed. We're part of a conference for a reason, and we will continue to focus on that and participate within the North Coast Athletic Conference as safe and as wisely as possible. But we're really looking forward to getting our students back in the fall, and whatever that might look like, and to get them a great education and start competing again.
Great. Thanks so much, Doug. And thanks to all of our panelists for your participation. And thanks to our participants for being with us this evening. Let me just remind you that we have additional Bishop Plus sessions. Actually, throughout the month of May, we have 3 sessions a week. We have mock classes on Tuesday afternoons. We have a topics-based session like this one on Wednesday evenings. And Thursday evenings, we have a focus on a different academic program each of the remaining weeks of the month. So please tune in for one of those. Every day at 4 o'clock, we also have a general information section conducted by an admissions staff member. So come to that, bring all of your questions, and we'll be happy to talk with you further. Again, our panelists contact information is here. They're happy to answer your emails and connect with you if you reach out to them. Thanks again. Stay safe, everyone. And thanks for joining us this evening. Bye-bye.